Do you own your own business? Have you ever wondered what your employees are doing when you're not there? How can you truly know what they're saying to your customers? And would you be horrified if your customers didn't say anything to you and quietly disappeared? Are your employees always saying they have too much to do and want you to hire more staff? In this video, I'm going to speak about what I found when I went undercover into my own property management company and dealt directly with my owners and tenants without them knowing who I was. I'll discuss some key insights on what went wrong and give you some suggestions to prevent the same thing from happening to you. So hopefully you won't be forced to do what I did and fire all of your frontline customer service staff. So to give you some context on how I had to go undercover into my own company, I think it would help to know how big the company is, what industry we're in. So I'm in property management, or more specifically in real estate. I've been an investor in real estate rental properties for 25, 27 years. And it's a natural course of action to actually start beginning to manage your properties because you have to have tenants, you lease the places out, you're on call 24/7 for maintenance, you're getting contractors in. I was a realtor for a little bit. So it was a natural progression to open up a management company, not only managing my own rentals, but to manage specifically for other investors, what we call third-party property management. That means we have people all around the world who own properties here in my home city up here in Canada, and they own the property, but they contract us to have a vacant property, determine what renovations need to get it ready for market, write the ad copy, put the ads out, answer the phones, answer Facebook, book the appointments, physically show the property, screening, move them in, collect the rent, warning letters, evictions, again, 24/7 maintenance, renovations with large contractors. You get the idea. So now we are in the unique position of being between owners and tenants. And quite often, an owner does not want what a tenant wants. An owner wants to make money. This is their investment. And a tenant might want the gold faucets and the brass ceilings. So it's difficult. So not only do we have to communicate to these two parties, we have to communicate effectively and we have to communicate quickly. Now think about this for a second. For any of you who might not own a rental property, I'm sure you've traveled. And if you know anybody who had a rental property a long time ago, even 10 years ago, most people rent a property, rent a house on their way to home ownership. Okay. I'm giving you this background because, again, this is, on YouTube, my business insights playlist. And I think it's good. We're just having a discussion here. But think about what I just said. 10, 15 years ago, you're a tenant living in a house. You want that home ownership. So you're kind of okay being in, quote unquote, just a rental. But what's happening now? Well, we have a lot of young people, let's say 40 years and younger, maybe a bit older, but you're 25 to 40-year-olds who are wanting the flexibility of renting. They don't want home ownership. They don't want high interest rates. They don't want to deal with furnaces and roofs. And if they're going to be moving around and switching jobs, they don't want to be tied down to an asset. That's what we're dealing with here. In addition, you might have a 25 or 30-year-old who is in their first career making very, very good money, who want to rent. What is their rental experience before this? Well, their rental experience is not living with their mom and dad in a rental property where things are broken constantly and you kind of just get used to things being run down. They're probably used to going on a trip, a family vacation, maybe renting something on Airbnb, the air conditioning breaks, a hotel, right? That experience, something else, toilet is clogged. You call the front desk and the concierge sends up a plumber pretty well instantly. In property management, I'm sorry, that's usually not happening. I say all of this to explain how quickly we have to communicate. But again, it's not just one tenant. We own the property. We send somebody to fix it. It's somebody says something's broken. We have to get permission from the owner. We have to get a hold of that owner. And it might take 2 or 3 days. We have to send somebody, diagnose it, then go back to the owner. I mean, you can picture how long this is taking already. And if the thing is fixed, okay, fine. If it's broken, it's a furnace or an air conditioning, well, I want 3 quotes. So what used to be in a hotel for our renters, for our young renters, 2-3 hours could be 2 or 3 weeks. So that's the playing field that we have here. Very, very intensive in customer service. So in our company, we have 20 plus people, 6 full-time property managers managing 650 houses or units for 350 separate owners. Now, 650 units doesn't sound like a lot for a medium to large size management company. And it wouldn't be if this was, I don't know, 5 or 6 apartment blocks that had 100 units in each. But think about what I said, 350 separate owners, 600 plus tenants. That means each person owns 1 house or maybe 1 duplex. Okay, we have some small multifamily. So, I mean, that's a lot of people. 600 plus 350, that's already 950 people that could call or email or text at any given time throughout a 24-hour period. So that's what we're dealing with here. And we've been doing it for a long time. And I think we've been doing it okay. I mean, not great, but, I go to conferences all the time and people are always saying, they're struggling. How do you keep your tenants happy? How do you keep your owners happy? How do you retain good quality staff? Okay. And nobody seems to know the right answer. So with my science background, we came up with a really good model here. And I think it was working okay. So much to the point that 2 years ago, I was able to actually step away from the company. Now, I didn't do this willingly, of course, and maybe I was forced into it a little bit earlier than I thought. Again, I'll just tell a really quick story on this video. So 2 years ago, I was potentially diagnosed with a disease, a brain disease that would only give me 4 months to live, no cure in sight. Okay. But they needed to repeat, basically, they had an MRI. They needed to repeat this MRI 5 months later in order to see if whatever they thought was growing in my head was going to be still there. But again, average person only lives 4 months. So I now have to wait 5 months in order to know whether I even have this thing growing in my head. That was 2 years ago. Obviously, I'm still here, but that was life scare number 1. Life scare number 2. So I get the all clear, go to Hawaii with my wife to celebrate, come back 3 weeks later, and I dive right back into my 18-hour days. Again, I don't know what I was thinking. All those different things about, promising myself for second chances, but it was just too much. So what I ended up doing was I worked my 18 hours. 3 weeks later, I almost drowned in a boating accident. So 2 life scares within months of each other. So that was what prompted me to say to my operations manager at the time, you are taking over the company. I need to go and focus on my real estate of what I started doing. So not the property management and managing for other people, but acquiring properties, renovating them, refinancing them for my capital partners. That was my first love. That was my joy. So I've spent 18, 24 months doing that. I've traveled, very, very happy. And of course, I'm meeting with my leadership team once a week. I'm not completely out of the company, but I'm, kind of pointing the ship in the right direction. They're bouncing some ideas off of me because of my experience, but I'm really not in the day-to-day. I rarely interact with any clients unless I happen to see them at a networking event. And I honestly don't even know half the clients because, as you know, I would have had a full-time business development person. So that's just the way things go. And that's what every business owner wants. So fast forward to about 2.5 months ago, maybe 2 months ago, my operations manager goes on vacation. Okay. Asks me to take over for a couple of weeks for the daily huddles and some of the other meetings, the training meetings, the Q&A sessions that we'd have almost on a daily basis with our property managers. And that's where I started seeing a few things. So fine. Daily huddles aren't a big deal. We're dealing with the fires and floods of property management. And a couple training sessions later, I get a question. Okay, I've got somebody who hasn't paid rent. How do we evict them? I mean, we've been in property management for 20 years, and we have a checklist for practically every process. So I said, well, first step is to follow the checklist. We have a checklist, blah, 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 blah. And I get a blank stare and a question of what checklist? So that was kind of a bit of a warning sign. Next day, okay, I get another question. How do we put somebody on a mediated agreement? I said, okay, well, I started explaining, and then I'm like, you know what? Did you actually check the steps of the checklist? And I hear, what checklist? So obviously we have, I don't know, 100, 200 checklists. They basically drive our processes. So I'm like, what's going on here? So of course I start digging deeper. And that's, when I decided to sort of become undercover here, right? And I started digging deeper, asking a few questions, and it was bad. And I know I posted this a little bit in another video, but I saw communications that were honestly something that could have taken a few minutes or even a couple of days, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then forgotten about until the person just gives up. That's not very good customer service. Yeah. So I also saw a lot of ChatGPT copying and pasting. I hope this email finds you in good health. I mean, it's so obvious that it's AI. It's just completely not appropriate. So again, this is no surprise. That's because this is already on the internet, but I decided to fire all of my 6 property managers, all of my frontline staff, all of my frontline customer service staff. So now out of a company of 20 people, I've got my executive team, obviously my, CFOs and operations managers and things like that, supervisors, but now the 6 people who are responsible to communicate directly with my owners and tenants and vendors are gone. So the undercover part here comes in because who's going to do this? And I decided that I needed to do this. And that's what the meat and potatoes of this video is what did I find when I went behind the scenes? What happened? And I don't know if I can really put a finger on what went wrong, but let me start by saying what I found. Okay. So again, communications, 2, 3, 5, 6 weeks behind. Simple things like appliances. So of course, somebody calls and says, hey, you know what? I don't have my stove. All right. So I'm about to create a new ticket, but of course I look in the maintenance ticket histories and I see there's already one there from 5 months ago. So I see, okay, tenant called in, stove is broken. We sent a repair person. Repair person says parts are not available, need to order a new stove. We contacted our appliance supplier, got a quote. I mean, everything sounds good, right? We got the quote. We sent it to the owner. The owner approves, and then nothing. So think of that. If you're the business owner and you see this, we did everything right except for just telling the supplier, yeah, go ahead. And then the tenant is going to have a stove in a week's time. So there was a lot of that. Pretty frustrating. I saw a lot of communications where people were afraid to pick up the phone. So what happens if you are trying, let's picture, again, you might be a business owner or just a regular consumer who's interested in what I'm saying. When you call, I don't know, your telecommunications company, somebody who provides you internet, your bank, and you get AI or you have to leave a voicemail. What's the feeling that you get? You're frustrated, right? You're just like, oh, are you kidding me? I just waited on hold for 40 minutes and now I have to leave a message, right? And that's the way we're going. But in property management, much like a realtor-client relationship, everything is still very old school. People have an expectation that they can get a hold of you. And this is housing. When something's broken, I don't care how small it is, it's important to that person. So you have to listen. And if you're afraid to pick up the phone, and whether you're going to be yelled at or you have to have an uncomfortable conversation, you have to pick up the phone. Why? I think because of the emotions involved in housing, people just want to be heard. And once they're heard and they know that you have taken the time to understand what they're going through so that they can know and they have confidence that they've given you that message, then they're going to feel better about that whole relationship. And then next time when something happens, they're going to trust that you've got their back. If you don't do that, you don't pick up the phone, you don't have a relationship, it's very transactional. I've used that in some of my other videos. You don't want a transactional relationship with your customers because all they're going to be judging you on then is price. They won't care that you're giving little extra things in whatever you're selling, or maybe it's a restaurant giving a little bit of extra portion, or like, again, a handwritten note. It's just transactional. So it's really, really important to pick up the phone, listen to people. But what was happening with us is you leave a voice message, 2 days goes by, what would you do? You call again, and you call multiple times. Or maybe you've emailed 1 week and then another week and then every 3 days and every 2 days and every 1 day. Well, think about what I said. 600 tenants, 350 owners, almost 1,000 people. If they're emailing you or communicating with you once or twice a year, but now multiply that by 10 because they know they have to call or email 10 times, you've now increased your communications by 10, by tenfold. It's not great. So I think what I'm finding now is I went undercover. Obviously, I'm telling all of the owners and tenants, I'm just answering the phone, property, Upper Edge Property Management, Garret speaking, can I help you? And they're like, oh, is this a live phone call? I'm like, yes, can I help you? Oh, I'm surprised that somebody picked up the phone. So that's the kind of stuff I'm finding. And then, of course, they don't know I'm the owner of the company. I'm just like, okay, well, they're like, oh, can I speak to so-and-so? Well, I'm sorry, so-and-so is no longer here. Well, I need to speak to them because I had XYZ problem. And I'm like, no problem. What's your name? Where do you live? So I look up their file and I help them out. And more often than not, I have to listen to some frustrations that they've had. And a lot of these phone calls, quite honestly, are not 2-minute phone calls. They're 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. So that's what I started doing. I'm picking up phone calls live. Or I'll hear an angry voicemail. And you know what? You grit your teeth and you just do it. And I think what I'm finding now is people appreciate it and the customers appreciate it because they want to be heard. And I'm apologizing for whatever we've done, even if we haven't done anything really bad except for not calling them back, just to let them know if we received their rent, because some people just want to know those types of things. You got to be polite. Our parents taught us it's just good manners to call people back, and it's good manners to listen. So I start off with apologizing. I'm sure all of you founders out there do the same thing. And then you listen. And if it takes me, I don't know, again, a half an hour phone call times 4, that's already 2 hours gone. You have to do it, because if that person doesn't feel that you're being genuine after their terrible customer service experience already, you're going to lose them again. So I think here's some key insights that I promised you, because I don't want this to happen to anybody when you're scaling. It's very easy to try to scale and say, oh, we've got too many people calling and we need to hire, but don't grow too fast. I've got some other videos on that. So insight number 1, don't be afraid to apologize. I'm not saying the customer is always right, but it goes a long way to apologize. Number 2, as I said, listen to your customers. Number 3, make sure that you know when to scale and how to scale. And it's the right time for you to scale. Now, what exactly does that mean? Let's think about this for a second. If you are, you have to make sure that you're slowing down enough to collect statistics on whatever it is that you're doing. Now, I don't mean looking on Google. I mean, if whether you have 30 5-star reviews or 5-star reviews, that's the people who chose to come out of their shell and leave you a good or bad review. And it's an okay indicator, but you need something simpler. And what we're going to start adapting here is a net promoter score, an NPS. Again, you can pick any kind of metric. I like NPSs because a lot of them are based on a one line survey, which is, would you recommend this business to your friends and family? And that's one of the biggest indicators. And if you are checking that, I don't know, every quarter or, twice a year, you're going to have a metric, whether it's 75%, 80%, 90%. And if you've got your finger on that pulse and all of a sudden you decide to grow a little bit and you hire one or two people and that number goes down, you can instantly know that something is wrong. You've made a misstep somewhere. Might not exactly know where, but instead of having everything blow up like it did on me, at least now you're making micro adjustments. You're looking at that number, or at least you have somebody in your company who is watching that number and that can report that number to you. I think I'm going to speak about scaling, operating systems, how to run a business properly. I mean, I'm not an expert, but at least how I went from myself up to 20 people, what steps that I took. That's what I'm going to be doing in future videos. And I'm also discussing some books on the best operating system to have an executive team and a leadership team that can help you make these decisions, especially if you're alone like I am and you don't have a business partner, or even if you do have a business partner, at least get a playbook so that you're basically growing and running your company the same as the bigger companies. So until next time, to your continued success.